And Roundup, from the transportation, the DOT's perspective, it's one of the safest products out here. The EPA and the DOT are so concerned about glyphosate that they don't even categorize it as a hazardous material. So,
do you transport this in a tanker truck?
Yes, I do.
And how many years have you been doing it?
Specifically Roundup, I've been doing it 8 years now.
Any signs of cancer?
No, nor have I grown a tail, nor have I grown a...
You're not showing signs of gills emerging?
No, not yet.
No, because you could have a reverse evolutionary process occur as a result of what you're toting around in that truck. You may start to look like an amphibian soon.
Well, compared to the pointy-headed intellectuals that are always assaulting at Monsanto...
if you do start de-evolving and become somewhat reptilian, I would suggest that you apply for an appearance on the Nat Geo show, Naked and Afraid. You'd probably do better than most of them in the jungle.
Well, I'll take that under advisement.
Have you ever watched that show, by the way, Naked and Afraid?
Only from flipping from one channel to the other.
I'm obsessed with it. It's not to see the naked woman's body, I swear to God. It's like I don't know why anyone would do that to themselves. Why would they go out into the jungle with a stranger of another sex and try to prove that they can survive for 20 or 21 days without anything? I don't understand why they would subject themselves to it. Of course they're going to get sick and almost die.
Well,
I don't know. Maybe there's a lot. Maybe they get a lot of money for it. And they don't even go with sandals. They got to walk in a jungle without sandals, for God's sakes.
I guess they're tenderfeet.
Yeah, they are tenderfeet for sure. But some of these people are so strong. Last night I saw one with a vegan woman and a former Marine who's as tough as nails. He broke down and she saved him. She wouldn't eat anything but fruits and vegetables. He scoffed at her. He killed I don't know what he killed. She got him a frog to keep him alive, and then she cried that she had to catch the frog to save him, but she wouldn't eat the frog. She wound up carrying him out of the jungle, basically. And this guy was as tough as nails, which taught me a lesson, by the way. Don't underestimate a vegan woman, man, or do so at your own risk.
Well, they are meaner than most.
No, she was a sweet woman. She was a survivalist and really nice. She had like a feminine voice, and she was a sweet woman. And this Marine, without her, he would have died. And here was a woman who, I don't know how she survived 20 days without any protein. She was eating fruits and vegetables. There's very, very little protein in that. But I'm saying, look, if you start to de-evolve and you find gills growing, I suggest you contact Discovery Channel and see if you can go on to Naked and Afraid.
Thank you.
And by the way, I have a gift for you in your truck. Can you read while driving? Countdown to Mecca. You can read it at truck stops.
I used to read through the desert, Uncle Mike.
Well, you got my novels coming on the way. Now, I want to ask a question since we're talking about amphibians. Are there still such thing as rest stop lizards?
Uncle Mike, that's an unfounded stereotype.
I know this is a family show, and I shouldn't have asked that question, but I thought since I've had such a long, hard day, I've had a day from HELL, you can't believe it, 4 hours on the floor with my equipment not working, engineers running in and out of Dallas. The show almost didn't work until a minute before showtime. God bless America. I'll be right back.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
Your Savage Nation is sponsored by SwissAmerica.com. It's the only company I trust for tangible assets, gold and silver. Call 800-BUI-COIN. Now let's talk about GMOs for those of you who are potheads. Are you aware that the new marijuana out there have much higher levels of THC? Now, I realize that modifying marijuana to give you that bigger high, the bigger blast from the more powerful dope than your grandfather smoked, did not involve the tools of modern technology necessarily, but some may have, by the way. Do you know for sure that some of these higher THC marijuana strains were not modified biotechnologically? How do you know that? How do you know that? And I guarantee you that even if you learn that some pot is GMO modified, you'd smoke it anyway. You'd say, I just want to get high. It's great stuff. So why don't you apply the same thing to golden rice? because you haven't thought it through, that's all. So, look, there are old methods and new methods in anything. And the fact of the matter is, the old methods were either by nature or man. The sweet corn varieties that we enjoy today include a natural mutation which allows them to retain their sugar content after picking. And in the 50s and 60s, many plant breeders used mutation breeding to increase the chances of finding DNA changes that would result in new traits, as I told you earlier. And what they did was they exposed the plants or seeds to doses of chemicals or radiation that actually would cause random mutations, and then looked for the rare cases where there was some desirable effect. Did you know that? They also used the toxic chemical colchicine to induce the plants to double their number of chromosomes, something that sometimes leads to more vigorous growth. And these methods were successfully employed by the extra-legal marijuana industry over the last few decades. So don't tell me that you're not using genetically modified marijuana. You are. Mutation breeding, chromosome doubling, which led to genetic changes, was a form of GMO. They say, oh, well, it wasn't really done in a laboratory. Yes, it was. This is just a more advanced method of doing it, biotechnology. And all you do is afraid of it because you don't understand it. Really, you have to understand that you're probably smoking GMO marijuana. You don't even know it because that's how it was done. I told you that's how farmers did it. I remember when I was a graduate student at the University of Hawaii working in ethnobotany, in an associated lab, there were young people working on papaya seeds. I was not interested in crops or anything like that, or in ornamental plants. I was always more practical in my mind, let's say more esoterically practical in my own mind. I was interested in medicinal plant technology and deriving medicines from jungle plants, to make it simple. But I'd watch these people working in horticulture, and they would sit with hundreds and hundreds of different papaya seeds. And I didn't know what they were looking for. They were looking for papaya that had fewer seeds. Because papaya is a very difficult fruit to eat. I ate one the other day. I happen to love papaya, right? I don't like the mess of a papaya. Well, most people don't like it. You got to cut it. You got to stick a fork in it and gently tease out the seeds that nature put in there. That's the way the seed, the plant propagates, obviously. And it's a mess. It's not as clean as some other fruit. So the papaya growers in Hawaii have spent millions and millions of dollars trying to find seeds for future papaya plants with less seeds in the fruit. That's a form of natural modification of plants. Now, admittedly, it's not a GMO papaya, but it's along the same lines, because if they use colchicine to increase the DNA changes, then they were doing the same thing. If they exposed the seeds or the plants to chemicals or radiation to cause random mutations, and then look for the rare instances where there was some desirable effect, such as a lower seeded papaya, well, what can I say to you? That's the way it is. So we're living in an artificially induced world to begin with. Everything we touch is artificial, which is, don't get me wrong now, I'm not arguing, therefore go and have a double cheeseburger and smoke a cigarette. I didn't say that. I myself watch very carefully what I put into my body. I personally will not eat any barbecued foods. Maybe once a year if I'm in the South, when the plane was forced to land in Memphis, I went to a barbecue joint. Why don't I eat barbecued foods? Why don't I barbecue? Because in the 60s, when I was in university, I learned about benzoapyrenes. That's the black stuff on top of meat. Cancer-causing, carcinogenic. Yeah, every time you grill, you are ingesting carcinogenic compounds. You say, come on, it's crap. Oh, it's crap? Nonsense. Really fast insiders of carcinogenesis. I don't eat barbecued foods. I won't eat any of that kind of stuff. So the thing is, I'm very careful with what I take. And so don't think I'm suddenly leaping onto the side of people saying eat anything, do whatever you want. That's nonsense. It's rubbish. I'm trying to apply common scientific knowledge to this very complicated issue of GMOs, and maybe alleviate some of the anxiety people are having in this area. And I want to leave you with the idea that the miracle rice that I told you about, that has been developed by Monsanto, could save 500,000 children a year from losing their sight owing to a lack of vitamin A. Don't you understand what's at stake here? And that the former founder of Greenpeace, Patrick Moore, jumped ship from Greenpeace and is now working to expose the dangers of Greenpeace and what they're doing. Yeah, they're actually helping starve the world's poor with their environmentalism.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
I talked about the fake black quitting as head of the NAACP in Spokane. And that's a huge story, and you've got to read her resignation letter to see what a devout revolutionary she really is, and how she really was using race as a weapon against the middle class, as do most civil rights organizations. They use their race as a weapon against innocent people, in my estimation. The big story for most of you, though, is the issue of GMOs. Many of you are freaked out over GMOs. You don't even know what they are. You have no background whatsoever in science, and yet you're panicked into thinking that GMOs are unsafe. What you don't know is that the supporters and partners who are involved in the $500 million a year PR campaign against GMOs reads like a directory of European church and government-sponsored social justice and development groups. The very same groups who are promoting the global warming lie are promoting the lie about GMOs. And I will prove it to you. Patrick Moore, one of the founders of Greenpeace in the 1970s, a bona fide true environmentalist, quit Greenpeace and now works to expose Greenpeace's actions in the developing world. And he has joined with golden rice inventor Ingo Potricus in calling for putting Greenpeace on trial for crimes against humanity. Did you hear me? There are other humanitarian and environmental groups that have come to recognize the important role biotech can play in alleviating human suffering and spurring development. Two of them are Oxfam and Nature Conservancy. They were initially opposed to GMOs, but in the light of overwhelming scientific confirmation of safety and efficacy, both Oxfam and Nature Conservancy have softened or ended their opposition to GMOs. Isn't it time that you open your mind to the realities that GMOs are not only not unsafe, they would be of benefit to so many millions of children who are dying of blindness? Where are you getting this information from that GMOs are unsafe? Many of you live in a panic about everything you put in your mouth. Let me explain something to you. GMOs can save millions of lives. It's the environmentalists who are doing real harm to the world. And the best example of this is golden rice. Does anyone out there know what golden rice is? It's a GMO-created rice. It's enhanced with vitamin A, producing beta-carotene. I happen to know that one of the biggest problems in the third world was blindness in children. And do you know why they were going blind? Because it was from vitamin A deficiency. Even to this day, 500,000 people, mainly children, will die from vitamin A deficiency. And 500,000 people, mostly children, 500,000 people, mostly children, will lose their sight. And about 6,000 of them will die from vitamin A deficiency. And that is why companies spent a fortune hybridizing rice, in this case, in order to make certain that the rice was rich in vitamin A, in this case, beta-carotene. It was to stop the blindness. It was to cure blindness. And so these idiots, these morons, are singing about GMOs. I see idiots in Marin County, California, driving around with "Stop Monsanto," lily-white morons who are afraid of everything in the world. They're afraid of black people, brown people. They're afraid of Asian people. They're afraid of UFOs. They're afraid of fluoride. They're afraid of brain waves in the air. They're afraid of pesticides. They're afraid of GMOs. Little chickens running around, afraid of the whole world. Let me explain to you how corn was developed. Do you know how corn was developed? Well, it was developed by the evil Native Americans and Central Americans over a long period of time. Corn was originally a grass with a very small group of flowers on the top, or seeds rather, and they started to hybridize it by picking the grasses with the larger seeds and cross-pollinating them or cross-matching them with other grasses with large seeds. Over and over and over and through millennia, they became corn. Do you understand that? Corn didn't just happen by itself. It was hybridized by Indian farmers until it became corn. Should we now have a bumper sticker that says, what, disinter them from their graves? and try them in the United Nations for